Hello, everybody. Welcome to my UFC 250 preview. My name is Danny Segura, and I am a mixed martial arts reporter for MMAJunkie.com, formerly MMAfighting.com. And as this video is titled, and I just said at the very intro, it's pretty self-explanatory, I'll be going over UFC 250 as we head into a weekend of fights. They'll be taking place this Saturday at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. The main event is Amanda Nunes defending her featherweight title against Felicia Spencer. Co-main event, we got Raphael Assuncao taking on Cody Garbrandt, former champion. So pretty big bantamweight bout there. Plus, this card has a nice little bantamweight theme, so it's going to be fun to break it down. I have Hachiko here because a lot of you guys ask about him. So instead of picking him up randomly and disappearing from the broadcast, I figured I might as well start in it. So I'll say hello, Hachiko. Yeah, he's just chilling. He had a little bit of an upset stomach, but he's fine. I've been giving him rice and chicken. Apparently, that's good on their stomachs, and he's feeling a lot better now. All right. Anyhow, I didn't do my weekly live Q&A this week because a lot is going on, obviously, in the world, especially here in America with police brutality and so many other things. So I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't time to do that. But I can't go on without this video without mentioning that. Obviously, a lot going on in this country. Very sad to see everything that's going on. It's sad that it came to this point. But the reality is that this has been going on for a long time. This is not something new. So all Black Lives Matters, and again, it's really sad to see what's happening, but hopefully there is some change, and for the better. So, anyways, let's get right into it. Again, if you're new to this, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Also, the super chat is open. If you guys want to donate, you guys can do that as well. No obligation, but if you want to support this channel and support me, that's a way you can support. But just by subscribing, liking, and just engaging, that in itself is huge, and I appreciate that very much. So don't feel obligated to donate in the super chat. All right, so let's get right into it. UFC 250, not the most stacked pay-per-view card, right? And I've seen the cards and the lineups that have been proceeding from this card that follow, and they haven't been great as well. But keep in mind, there's a big asterisk. Although there's a lot going on in this country, obviously, there's still a pandemic going on. I feel like we've kind of forgotten about that. Obviously, it's been reported a little bit less just because the spotlight has shifted on other things that are also important and require attention as well. But yeah, just remember there's a big asterisk in all these cards that it's a pandemic. Basically, international fighters cannot compete. It's really, at least for now, until Fight Island gets going, it's really only the U.S. fighters. So again, the UFC is working with only a portion of the roster rather than their full roster, and a lot of their big stars are international. A lot of their big names are international. So keep that in mind. So again, not the most stacked card, but it's a pretty good card here. So we're gonna start breaking it down from the top. We'll work our way to the bottom. I did not take Twitter questions for this. I'll save that pretty much exclusively to live Q&As that I do on Tuesday at 7 p.m. But feel free to drop in questions as we go. As I go down per fight, I'm going to be checking the chat as well. So if you have questions about a specific fight, feel free to drop them. If you have questions about just regular stuff that's going on in MMA and anything else, save that for Tuesday's live Q&A. I should be doing one on Tuesday. Should be at 7 p.m. like usual. If there's any changes, I'll update you guys on that. But yeah, there will be a live Q&A next week. All right, so Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer. This is a women's featherweight bout. Nunes defending her belt, and this will actually be her first defense as a featherweight champion. And I believe she becomes the only champ that's actually defended both belts if she's successful, obviously, on Saturday night. So it's a big moment for her, a big moment for the sport, a big moment for women's MMA. Obviously, she has a little bit more leeway into, actually playing the role of a champ due to the fact that there really isn't a women's featherweight division. There's just a handful of fighters that just happen to be featherweights. And that gives her the opportunity to sort of fight at a much slower pace. Now, if you were to be champion, say, of the men's welterweight and lightweight division, there's so many fights going on at all times, and that belt needs to be in circulation that it's very difficult for a champion to have dual roles, both at 170 and 150. And that goes across really any weight class. But given the fact that, again, this women's featherweight division is so thin, she's able to do that. But nonetheless, it's still a very impressive thing to do and actually, do the whole champ thing, because one thing's winning it, the other thing's defending it. So, again, really big moment here. So this is an interesting bout. I think, for the most part, Nunes is starting to create this aura of invincibility, which is fair, I believe, given the fact that, she's destroyed some of the biggest names, literally destroyed, and she's looked great. She's looked better than she ever has in her career in the last few years, and it really looks like she's in her prime right now. In her prime, I think people probably always expected her to get better, but I don't think people expected her to get this much better. She's obviously a much improved fighter since, the times she fought, I don't know, Kat Zingano and these other names. In fact, the Kat Zingano fight was her last defeat. That was back in 2014, so it's been a minute for her. Felicia Spencer, she's not the biggest name. She's, hasn't made it making this fight, not super big. It's not like Nunes Holm, Nunes Rousey, Nunes Tate, Nunes Cyborg, etc. But I do think she can offer a few things here that other contenders haven't faced. One is size and physicality. I mean, Cyborg kind of offered that, but we know that Cyborg is primarily a striker, so size doesn't really have a huge influence in that aspect. But she's a grappler. She's a really good grappler. She's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And in these type of cases, size does matter, and it can often wear on a fighter, especially as the rounds go on. And we know that Amanda Nunes, at least in the early portions of her career, had a bit of a cardio issue. I don't think we've seen that recently. But again, she also hasn't. She went to a decision in her last fight, but a lot of her fights before that were quick finishes. But even in her last fight, when she went to decision, it seems that those cardio issues have been fixed. Now, I don't think you will become an Nate Diaz that can put in 10 rounds out of nowhere, but certainly you can do enough to become, able to fight for 5 rounds and be able to fight, well. So keep that in mind. So keep that in mind that although her cardio has improved, she's still not, again, an Nate Diaz type fighter. These fighters that just have cardio for days. I think a lot has come with, sure, her cardio has improved, but also just fight management and the expenditure of energy throughout the fight. She's really learned how to manage that a lot better. But yeah, this is an interesting fight because of that. I think Felicia Spencer has proven that she's tough. Obviously, in that Cyborg fight, she proved how durable she is. So if she's able to hang and take some of the power and some of the punches that Amanda Nunes has to offer, maybe, especially when it comes to grappling, maybe in the 4th, 5th round, she could really shine. So this is actually a very interesting fight. Although, again, it's not the biggest fight, I do find it to be a fight that will, answer a lot of questions as far as the champ's concerned, for both sides, but especially for the champ, obviously, since she's the bigger name. So I'm still going here with Amanda Nunes. I think the world of Amanda Nunes. I think she's extremely skilled. I think her power she's probably one of the hardest hitting fighters in women's MMA. I mean, even it almost seems that almost harder than Cyborg as well. I mean, her power just seems ridiculous. Her technique is so good. That's why she's also so powerful as well, because her technique is very clean. And she can grapple as well. She's very well-rounded, and she's got a lot of tools. So, again, I'm very intrigued in this one. I think Felicia Spencer has a lot to offer here and can test Amanda Nunes, but I think Nunes, ultimately, I think she should pull it off. I mean, she should be. I'm pretty sure she's a heavy favorite going into this fight, and rightfully so. I mean, just look at her last performances. So, let's see real quick. Okay, Alex Cartier asking here, you agree, let me feature this since I can do so. You agree that size goes up, skill level goes down. I don't know if you're, no, not necessarily, but I do understand what you're saying. I don't think it applies to this situation at UFC 250 with Nunes, Felicia Spencer, but I think, you know, I consider, for example, and this doesn't go, again, this is just a generalization. I don't think it applies to every single fighter, but for the most part, you do find some of the most technical fighters in the lower weight classes. I would say on average, the lower you get, the more technical the fighters get, but that doesn't mean necessarily that you'll find the most technical guys at, at the lower weight classes. I just think on average, if you sum up the entire pool, I think you probably get better technique. And that's due to the fact that mostly the lighter fighters, again, they can't rely on strength. They can't rely a lot on their physicality. So they have to rely a lot on technique. And also, in the lower weight classes, the lower you get, it seems like, and there's differences in athleticism. Obviously, there's some fighters that weigh the same that are more athletic than others. But for the most part, the lower you get, the better athletes you get in the lower weight classes. I don't know why that is. I mean, a lot of people have suggested that, because these big guys, say, for the heavyweights or the light heavyweights, all these big guys have other outlets through sports where they can make more money. So that's where the better athletes go, say football, basketball, etc. Whereas these lighter guys that weigh 125 pounds, 135, 45, you get it. They can't play American football. They can't, play basketball. I mean, their size just puts a limit on that. So maybe MMA and combat sports, because it's weight oriented and you kind of have a fair shake on that end, it attracts probably the best athletes for those given weight classes. So there could be something to it. But as far as if you're referring to this specific instance where Amanda Nunes is going up to 145, I really don't think that the fighters at 145 are less skilled than the fighters at 135. I just think there's more of them at 35 because it seems that's a more, I don't say normal, but a more common size for women, 135 than 145. I mean, and then the higher you go, it almost seems the less women you find, because naturally, you don't see like athletic women getting up to like 185 and these other weight classes that men can actually fill out. So I think there's something to that again, but I don't think it's a hard rule where it applies everywhere. I think, for example, again, like I said, I think Felicia Spencer is extremely skilled. If she were able to get down to 135, say trim down her muscle or whatever, or let's just for this specific question, shrink her so she can go up to 135, go down to 135. I think she would be still a top player, and she would definitely be a title challenger at 135. Given her skill set. So to answer your question, it's true, but it doesn't really apply to everyone. But yeah, anyway, so anybody got any questions from the main event? This is a solid main event. I'm really looking forward to it. Again, it has historic implications on all kinds of angles, and from a sporting standpoint, I think Spencer has a lot to offer here for Nunes. Now, I think some people submitted actually questions via Twitter. I didn't specify that I wasn't going to take Twitter questions. So because I did that, I am going to answer the Twitter questions. I'm just not going to feature them as I usually do with the actual tweet on the screen. But yeah. Let's see. So yeah, questions about the co-main event, not the actual main event. So I'll move on to the co-main event unless anybody has any questions about the main event here. Yes, no, maybe. All right, moving on to the co-main event. If anything, we can always go back, obviously. So in the co-main event, I mean, this one's a very interesting one. It's Raphael Assuncao taking on Cody Garbrandt. Assuncao, he's up there in age. He's 37 years old, and Cody Garbrandt, I think he's my age or maybe a little bit older. He's 28, so he's actually a year older than me. But this is an interesting fight. It seems like a lot of things on this card, as far as the bantamweights are concerned, are kind of backwards a little bit, in the sense of, it seems, and look, Assuncao's a great fighter. Cody Garbrandt's a great fighter as well. But as far as the rankings today and who's at the top, it seems those guys are at the bottom, and probably from a merit standpoint shouldn't be in the co-main event. I mean, you got guys like right below them, Aljamain Sterling versus Cory Sandhagen. I thought Sterling should have been fighting for a title against Peter Yan instead of Aldo. So, and I believe, is he even ranked number one contender? Let me pull up the UFC rankings. Not that they matter a whole lot, but I mean, they do base some of their decisions based on that. So it's kind of good to hold them accountable to that. So yeah, number one is still Marlon Moraes. I get it. He beat Jose Aldo. 2 is Aljamain Sterling. 3 is Peter Yan. So technically, your title fight is between number 3, Peter Yan, who I think he should be fighting for the belt, against number 6. But I think it should have been 2 and 3. Now, I know Marlon Moraes is number one contender according to the UFC rankings, but in my mind, he's not. Given the fact that, yes, he beat Aldo, but it was a controversial win, and prior to that, he suffered a loss to Henry Cejudo, while Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling are on pretty extensive win streaks. So yeah, keep that in mind. But yeah, as far as the co-main event, it's a little backwards in that end, but I do understand why they're doing that. Obviously, Cody Garbrandt, as far as pedigree goes, he does, not only about name itself, but just pedigree, being a former UFC champion. In fact, that puts him over Aljamain Sterling and Cory Sandhagen as far as status. Now, and as far as name and popularity, the guy definitely has more pop than both. So I get that as well. It very much feels like, in this moment, it feels like this is kind of like, I mean, we know what Cody Garbrandt is capable of doing, but given his last performances, I mean, we've seen this story again where guys seem to be something, and then they end up either, taking a different route in their career, or, their success in their career maybe is just a short-lived window. So I don't know if that's the case for Garbrandt, and that's what we're going to find out on Saturday. But it definitely feels like this is sort of the UFC just kind of putting their last bet, right? They've just been betting on him, and it hasn't really paid off. And it seems like this might be maybe not the last time, and there's always a way back, especially in MMA. But it certainly feels like, all right, Cody, like, if you're going to do something, do it now. You're 28 years old. The time is now. And if you don't, like, obviously, I think they could still use him and, give him good fights in the UFC. And he's certainly a very entertaining fighter. But I don't necessarily think that they'll give him the accommodations that they are giving him now, and they have been giving him for quite some time. I don't think they'll put him in a co-main event moving forward if he were to lose. So this is a big moment for him. Now, he's done some changes, so it seems like he's ready for this moment. Will it pay off against Assuncao? We'll find out. Let me pop over to the chat to see if there's any questions about the co-main event. If not, I'll keep talking about it because I do have a few more thoughts I want to share about that fight. All right, interesting question here by Eduardo Romero. How fucked up would it be if Cody skips the line and gets the next title chance? UFC really screwing Sterling, Sandhagen, Moraes, Edwards, etc. Edwards. I guess Edwards at 170. Well, that's a little bit of a different situation because Edwards is unable to fight. He's in the UK and there's travel bans. Again, the UFC is only working with what they got in the US. If Edwards would have been in the US, I'm sure he would have been booked in a fight by now. And he's a top contender. Again, I don't think the UFC has like a huge urge. He's not a big star, so I don't think they have a huge urge to like get out there and promote him as they do other names. But I mean, he was booked to fight the number one contender, Tyron Woodley, so they were giving him a big fight. It just, the pandemic happened and now he's unable to get into the US, so keep that in mind. I don't really think the UFC is really like screwing him over as some people think. It's just a shitty situation and an unfortunate situation for him. But that's what happens when there's a global pandemic, right? So yeah, but I do agree in Sterling, Sandhagen, and maybe not so much Moraes, but definitely Sterling. I think that guy should have been fighting for the belt against Peter Yan. But um, again, it's all business. It's all business as well. It's a balance between sports and business. It's not just straight up sports. But yeah, that's an interesting question. I think Cody Garbrandt. I mean, I think there's a slight chance that he could win a title shot off this. To be honest, it seems the UFC wants to sort of, again, we're going back to back events here. I believe for the whole month of June, there's going to be an event every single weekend. We saw 3 events in 1 week when they first launched at the end of May. So yeah, it seems they want to keep very busy. Obviously, because of their contract, they have to give fighters a certain amount of fights, and because they missed a good portion because of the pandemic, we're going to see more and more fights, and we're going to see also worse cards, to be honest, right up to the point where they're unable to unlock the second part of the roster, which is their international fighters. But look, it wouldn't really surprise me. I mean, if Cody goes out there, and keep in mind he's a former champ, he puts in a performance like he did against Dominic Cruz, or some of the knockouts that he had coming up on his way to a title shot. I mean, the guy looked like he was going to be very special. I mean, those performances were something else. And if he's able to do that, and then Sterling and Sandhagen happen to look somewhat flat, especially if Sandhagen wins, because I feel like Sterling, if he wins, he almost becomes undeniable at this point. But even then, you can't really guarantee anything. But certainly, I think right now, the UFC is they put all these bantamweights together for a reason, and I think certainly the next title challenger will come out of this card for sure. But I have a pretty strong feeling that Sterling Sandhagen is still the title eliminator. I think things have to go terribly wrong in that fight for either of those guys not to get a title shot. Say like a DQ or just a horrible stoppage or decision or something super controversial where you have to run it back, or maybe there's a bad injury and then like a torn knee, knock on wood, right? I don't want to wish that on any athlete. A torn ligament, and then they're out. I think if any of those weird circumstances present themselves, I feel like if Cody just happens to look very good, they might be able to go that route. But as long as Sterling and Sandhagen do what they know how to do, which is fight their asses off and put on great performances and win, the winner there should get the next title shot. I feel pretty comfortable about that. And it's not like Garbrandt's coming off a win and then you compare 2 wins together and make a little bit of a case there. I mean, the guy's literally on a 3-fight losing streak, and all those losing streaks all those losses were finishes. 1 in the second round and 2 in the first. So, his past doesn't look so good. But certainly, I think even with those 3 losses, he could win this one and be a fight away from fighting for the belt if he wants to, of course, unless he wants to take a slower route. But it feels like the UFC is always all into getting him right back up there. So, I mean, he's in the common event fighting Assuncao. So, yeah. It's definitely a possibility. Let's see. Okay, so no more questions about the common event. Oh, no, yeah, actually, the Twitter one that I said I was going to address. Actually, it was the same thing. I wonder if it's the same guy. Yeah, basically asking the same thing. Do I see Cody Garbrandt getting the next title shot with an impressive win? I think it's possible, but I don't think it's very likely, to be quite honest with you. It's just, again, 3-fight losing streak. Even Garbrandt, like, he's not, if you notice the build-up, like, he's not talking much shit. He's not being, like, out there. It seems he really just wants to improve as a fighter, and he knows that if he does that, eventually he'll get back to the belt. I don't think he's in a rush to get back. And look, he's only 28 years old. Like, he's so young that, like, he could have very well take his time, still make a good amount of money, still be in big marquee fights and big cards, and just progress his game, get better, tune things up, and then eventually get back to the belt. So I don't think he's in a rush either. Now, a lot of talk about Cody Garbrandt, of course, because he's one of the bigger names on the card, but people are forgetting about Raphael Assuncao. I mean, I think it's a shame what the guy has what's happened to that guy. I think at one point he really was, if not the best bantamweight, the second best on the planet. I don't know if that's the case anymore. He's 37 years old. He's coming off 2 defeats. But I think if you rewind a few years back, say like 2017, 3 years ago, when he was like 34, 33, and kind of towards still in his prime, maybe a little bit towards the end of it, but very much still a prime Raphael Assuncao. I think he was one of the best fighters in the world, and I think politics screwed him, and I think it's a shame because it's a shame that, for example, he's never fought for a belt. That to me is ridiculous. I mean, at one point, he was 1-1 with the champ. He was 1-1 with the champ, and that was TJ Dillashaw, and they still decided not to make the trilogy. And they skipped them over, and look, at one point he was on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fight win streak, fights TJ Dillashaw, and that includes with a winner. TJ Dillashaw loses, and then he goes to beat on Aljamain Sterling, Marlon Moraes, and then those were his 2 best opponents recently, and then Matthew Lopez and Rob Font, which Rob Font is great, Matthew Lopez as well. So you add 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He was 11-1, bro. 11-1 in his past 12 bouts, and the guy still couldn't get a title shot. And then they just kept feeding him against the top contenders. He fought Marlon Moraes, who's an absolute beast, and that was a rematch, and he lost that bout. And then Cory Sandhagen, who's obviously, we were just talking about him a little bit, and we're going to talk about him next. He's obviously offering a lot of new things to the bantamweight division and a top contender. So you fight top contenders long enough, you're going to lose. That, it's like almost like being a champion without the belt, like just fighting the top guys over and over. Like, you're bound to lose at some point. But I do think the guy should have at least, even if he would have gone on to lose to Dillashaw in the trilogy fight, at least just to say he had that moment. He had the opportunity to capture gold. He had the opportunity to share the belt share the octagon with a champion. That in itself is a huge accomplishment. I think fighters might not publicly say it, but for example, I've had 2 instances where I've spoken to fighters that have lost in title fights, and they still look at that moment fondly. I remember, and this was when I was a fan, one of the first UFC events I attended. In fact, the first one was when Ian McCall fought Demetrius Johnson in Florida, and Leonard Garcia, I believe, fought on the card, or I'm pretty sure he fought on the card, or maybe he was a guest fighter. I'm not quite sure, but I was a fan at the time, so don't judge me. I was in media, and I had a poster from WEC because I was a big fan. I was a pretty hardcore fan, and I believe, was that when he fought Mike Brown? Let me pull up his record because I don't want to talk shit. Say something that's not accurate. It might have been when he fought Mike Brown. I'm pretty sure because Garcia fought for the belt in WEC. Yeah, against Mike Brown, and then I had the poster, and he was kind of shook because when he fought for that specific fight, that was, let me see here, that was in 2009, and then this was in 2012. So about like 3 years had passed, maybe a little closer to 4. WC was really for hardcore fans, so I think he was kind of shook when he saw the WC poster that I asked him to sign, and then he was like telling I think the person that he was with, he's like, oh yeah, this is when I fought for the belt, this and that, and I mean the guy lost in the first round against Mike Brown. Tough defeat, but it felt like he felt proud just to get to that moment, like just to be in a championship fight. That's pretty big moment, and then I had a similar experience also talking to Thiago Alves. Now this was professional manner as I was working. I'm a journalist It might have been for MMA Junkie or maybe MMA Fighting. I think probably for MMA Junkie. And then I was talking to him about his fight with GSP. That's when he fought for the belt, and he's just like, he looks back on that moment and he's like, yeah, I fought the GOAT. I fought the best in the world. I shared the octagon. I fought for a belt. Like, he lost, and obviously I'm sure he doesn't feel happy about that, but certainly looks back at that memory and just getting to that point because that's the ultimate goal. As a contender, the ultimate goal is to win the belt, but you got to get to the belt. So that's a lot of hard work, and that's in and of itself, it's an achievement just to get to that moment. And I feel like Assuncao had the resume, did everything, and got to that moment, but he got skipped over a little bit by politics. So now at 37, I mean, never say never. You can always turn things around. But look, if the young guns like Sterling, like Sandhagen, aren't getting the title shots, and you could make an argument that they're a little bit more brash, a little bit more outspoken than Assuncao, and cost a little bit more of stir, at least certainly in the media. If they're having a tough time getting a title shot, what makes you think that Assuncao, coming off 2 losses, will get a title shot if he were to beat Cody Garbrandt? Even if he were to go on another crazy fight win streak. I mean, the guy was on a 7-fight win streak. At one point, he was 11-1 in his 12 fights. Yeah, man. And so, yeah, very unfortunate there. So, yeah. But anyways, he's got a big fight here with Cody Garbrandt. If he's victorious, that'll be a nice win for him. Putting a former champion in his resume obviously is a good thing. But yeah, that's gonna be a pretty good fight. I'm curious to see how it looks because Assuncao is pretty well rounded. He can do it all. He can strike. He can grapple. Obviously. So Cody Garbrandt, I don't necessarily want to say he has a weak chin, but it's definitely proven that he can be put away. He can be put away. So I'm curious to see if Assuncao is going to test that. So yeah, that's going to be a great co-main event. Very much looking forward to that. Now let's talk about the fight that probably should have been the co-main event, but it's not. Likely a title eliminator here. A number 1 contender fight. It's between Aljamain Sterling versus Cory Sandhagen. That's a pretty fun bout. I'm looking forward to it. Both guys are, I want to say, a little bit awkward in their fighting style, maybe. Certainly not very orthodox. But this is going to be a good one, man. This is going to be a good one. I like the approach that Sandhagen's having. Obviously, I feel like Sterling has a little bit more claim to the title. Again, I've said that he's probably should have been fighting for the belt. So I feel like Sandhagen, feels more comfortable taking the certain mentality that he has, which is, look, Peter Yan and Aldo is a bigger fight than any of either me or Sterling versus Peter Yan. Obviously, given the fact that Aldo's one of the greatest featherweights of all time. I think he's the greatest, and he's a bigger name. He's been headline pay-per-views, headline so many cards that he sees it like, okay, go ahead, fight. Like, F it. I'm still young. I still got time. If Peter Yan puts on an impressive win, he'll get some of that shine from that Aldo shine. So when I do fight him, obviously if he's victorious over Sterling, then that shine is going to go on me because, the fight will be much bigger than it is. And if Aldo wins, look, we got, the greatest featherweight of all time, now a bantamweight champion. That's a pretty big fight. So I do get that standpoint. Obviously, I think he's like 5-0 in the UFC. Let me make sure that's accurate. Yeah, 5-0. Pretty impressive as well, but it seems Sterling has a little bit more claim to the belt. So it almost feels like Sandhagen, again, regardless, even if you would have done Yan versus Sterling, he needed an extra fight, period. So he just happens to be fighting the guy that could, take that away from him, Sterling. So that's kind of good because you can knock him out and then you become the man. So this is actually a pretty good opportunity for Sandhagen. For Sterling, I mean, is just really claiming what we already know, that he's the number 1 contender. Sterling has put on pretty good performances. He's on a 4-fight win streak, beating Pedro Munoz, Jimmy Rivera, Cory Sandhagen, and Brett Johns. So good win streak as well. And not only that, but he's looked quite good, within that run. Obviously, that Sandhagen submission with the Sulev stretch, it was certainly something to remember. a little bit historic, right? That was like number two or number three. Was the first one? I don't know. I'm forgetting now, but might have been like two or three, I think, in the UFC. So yeah, this is a pretty good fight. Like you said, I do think that this fight is the number one contender. I think again something terribly wrong, like a DQ, like a bad DQ, or like a really controversial stoppage, or a horrible decision, or something. Something has to go terribly wrong for the winner here to not get a title shot. So I don't expect that to happen. You never know. It's MMA. It's a weird sport. It lends itself for weird outcomes. But um, yeah, I think the guy who wins this is fighting for the belt next. And frankly, I think, although I think Sterling should have been fighting Jan, I do agree with sort of Sandhagen's standpoint. And I do agree with giving Aldo a shot, given the fact that, like, again, he's a bigger name. And Henry Cejudo just left, who is obviously a big name in the lower weight classes. So right now you need to build, not really contenders, because these guys are super skilled already, but you need to build their names. You need to build their brands. And one of the most effective ways of doing that is by pairing them up with other big names. And Aldo certainly, I think, now that Cejudo's out of the bantamweight division, I think Aldo has to be the biggest name in there. And yeah, they do that, so it works either way. Either the shine either goes to Peter Yan, or more clout goes to Aldo, and then the next contender, if successful against Aldo, will steal that. So I do get that logic. I do get it. Also, think about this. This is kind of weird. Imagine if, like, Aldo were to win, right? Imagine if, again, some crazy weird shit happens where Sterling Sandhagen has to ends it in a no contest or something like that. Um, and then Cody Garbrandt just looks amazing. Again, there's a lot of ifs in that equation, but kind of possible, right? We could possibly get Garbrandt versus Aldo. Who saw that coming? That honestly, that would be a fun fight. That'd be a weird fight, but a fun one. I'd also like to see at some point Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz, the rematch. The first fight was super fun, and it kind of shocked everybody. Like, what? Like, how is this even possible? We've never seen Cruz being outclassed to that, in that manner. So yeah, I wouldn't hate a rematch there. And there was a little bit of bad blood between the two as well. Obviously, a Team Alpha Male beef versus Cruz, really. Not really alliance, but just Cruz. Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting fight. All right, so any questions about that? If not, I'll move on to the next two fights. I don't want to spend too much time on the two fights below that, but I do feel like obviously they're main card fights, and they should be mentioned. So I'm going to check here the chat. Okay, so yeah, no questions. All right, so next up, right below that is Neil Magny versus Anthony Rocco Martin. It's a pretty good fight. This is an interesting one as well. Neil Magny is a guy that 32 years old. God, I swear he was much older. I mean, it feels like he's been fighting for a really long time, or maybe because he fights so much, it feels like, a lot more time has passed, but it actually hasn't, maybe. But I remember his incredible run. At one point, he was on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fight win streak. It seems 7 is a good number, and after that, things go south for a lot of contenders. Then he met Damian Maia, lost, and then rebounded with an Eric Silva win, which is good. Kelvin Gastelum win, which is great. Then Hector Lombard, which is a former Bellator champion, great win. In fact, that was one of my favorite fights that year in 2016. If you haven't seen Hector Lombard versus Neil Magny, I encourage you to go back and watch it after this on UFC Fight Pass. It was just an amazing fight. Just the tides were turning, the contrast in styles, skinny and long and rangy versus stocky and powerful. I mean, it was literally a fight that you would recreate in a movie. And then from then on, he started having some hiccups. Lost to Lorenz Larkin, who at the time, that was prior to his move to Bellator, obviously. At that time, Lorenz Larkin was on fire. I do think he's maybe slowed down a little bit, but I also think obviously guys like Douglas Lima are very good, and have he's had issues there. Defeated Johnny Hendricks that wasn't the Johnny Hendricks of old. Then lost to Rafael Dos Anjos, defeated Carlos Conde, Craig White, lost to Santiago Ponzinibbio, defeated the Leech. So again, kind of up and down in his career. We'll see if he's able to sort of. And then he had the USADA suspension too. Remember that. So yeah, it seems like he's in a weird spot. I mean, he's always been I don't want to say a gatekeeper. He's certainly been I think he's a little bit more than that. He's been a top contender. But again, if you look at the losses, Damian Maia, Lorenz Larking, Dos Anjos, Santiago Ponzinibbio, all those guys were super hot at the time. They were peaking. So it almost feels like, again, he's unable to sort of pass that level of competition. But then you look at some of his other wins, like the Gastelum, the Lombard win. Those are pretty good wins. Even, for example, like the Leech, defeating the Leech is a tough task, very tough task. The Leech is a very good fighter. In fact, I was actually there for that fight, UFC 248. So yeah, we'll see. This is a big moment for him. I don't think Rocco Martin is that type of opponent that will teach us like, okay, well, this is a new Neil Magny. This is a Neil Magny that has potential to get to the title. But certainly it'll build on a 2-fight win streak. The Leech, Rocco Martin is a pretty good fighter. I mean, those two names paired up, it's good resume. And then from there he can build on. And given the fact that the UFC is trying to put on so many fights, a guy that is able to stay injury free and is able to compete and make 170 constantly, repeatedly, time after time after time, this type of situation benefits him 100%. This whole pandemic, like, it certainly changed the game. You see guys becoming contenders like Gilbert Burns, who normally wouldn't. Maybe not wouldn't, but it would take much longer. Just because, these are guys, for example, Burns comes from a jiu-jitsu background. The dude is used to competing every weekend multiple times. You know what I'm saying? This ain't an issue for him. He's a former lightweight as well, so 170 is I'm not saying it's a piece of cake to make the weight, but certainly easier, keeping in mind that he was 15 pounds fighting 15 pounds below that. So again, this whole pandemic is gonna benefit guys who can stay injury-free, who can have a busy schedule, who can make their weight multiple times comfortably. I mean, you got Charles Rosa, who recently fought against Bryce Mitchell. Is he fighting on this card or another card nearby? Let me double check. No, it's not this card, but Charles Rosa is booked for, I believe, next week for June 13th. So again, if you're a guy that's able to stay injury free and active, this is like the perfect time for you. This will actually hurt fighters like Tyron Woodley, like a few other guys who maybe not struggle to make the weight, but it's certainly a much more difficult path to make their weight, and also just usually have a low activity as far as the number of fights they log in a calendar year. So yeah, big opportunity here for Neil Magny to put the USADA suspension behind him and really start building something here. And the welterweight division is super fun right now, and he's certainly a fun fighter. So the more wins, the better it'll be for him, obviously. But I think just the way he is as a fighter, this whole situation will suit him quite well. As far as for Anthony Rocco Martin, this is an interesting fight. So, I spoke to him on the virtual media day, and asked him some questions. And the reporter that followed up, after that, asked him something. I believe like, do you feel any pressure coming into this fight? Whatever. I don't know. It was like pretty much like a normal question. And he actually dropped in there a little gem where he was like, yeah, this is my last fight on my UFC contract. And then the reporter, rightfully so, followed up, and he's like, okay, well, are you trying to choose to test free agency? Because he didn't say this, but this is me assuming, because right now it's a weird time to test free agency because no other organizations are having fights. PFL is not having fights, Bellator is not having fights, and there's no PFL postponed the whole 2020 season. So it's gonna be an entire year for fighters to be able to compete under that banner. And with Bellator, like, we haven't really had any resolution as far as when they could possibly return to schedule. So So it'd be a weird time to test free agency, right? And so, anyways, the reporter asked him like, "Yeah, so you trying to test free agency? Or like, what's the deal?" And he's like, "No, the UFC just never approached me. I mean, it was my last fight on my deal, and usually they approach fighters with one fight left, and some fighters choose to roll the dice. Some decide to take the safe route and probably still take a better deal, but just a guaranteed, deal rather than rolling the dice and taking one fight and risking the potential to lose. And yeah, so I mean, and he said, I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's because um, the whole pandemic thing, and they obviously have their hands full just trying to put on fights right now, and dealing with COVID-19 protocols and so many other things as well. They're trying to figure out. So that could be it as well, or maybe I don't know. Maybe they're just not looking to resign him. Who knows? But it's also weird because he is getting a big opportunity here with Neil Magny, and he's also on the main card. So I really don't. I really think it's more of the situation. Maybe it went past by them rather than maybe them not having interest in resigning him. I don't know. But Rocco Martin is a fun fighter and definitely a fighter that's evolving, getting better, and just right now at this moment, he's a very skilled fighter. So certainly a good addition to the welterweight division. So that's going to be an interesting fight. I might have gone with Magny on that one, but I think that's a coin toss for me. I think for the Sterling Sandhagen fight again, a lot of these fights are very even. But yeah. And then all right, so enough about that fight. I said I wasn't gonna talk much about it, but it ended up going on a rant there. But right below it, oh by the way, any questions about that welterweight bout? No. All right. So let's move on to the last fight, the fight that's going to open up the UFC 250 main card. It's a good fight. It's one that I'm excited for. Very much looking forward to it. It is Eddie Wineland taking on Sean O'Malley. Corrected that. Right. I used to say O'Malley. Sean O'Malley. But anyways, this is a good fight, man. I'm really looking forward to it. I like these. I'm a big fan of these fights where it's a vet taking a young up and comer for a bunch of reasons. One, because I feel like it's a good opportunity for both, right? I mean, I think if Eddie Wineland beats Sean O'Malley, a guy that's considered very much the new generation, a guy that's has learned modern MMA, that's bringing the new techniques to the game, right? That says something about you. That says something that your style's still relevant, your skill set's still relevant, and you're still game to compete with. I don't want to say improved version, but the farther you get into things, usually for the most part, especially in sports, the more they progress, right? That's why the GOAT conversation is a little tougher. Like if you look at for example, take a football like soccer, right? The games that you saw back in the day certainly looks much different than the games that you saw today. Obviously, there's more knowledge, there's better technology to make the athletes better, whereas you know where it's like ways to improve athleticism and workout regimens or just nutrition, better machines, again better medicine to keep these guys healthier, right? If you have a knee injury a few years ago, it might have been pretty much career ending, which is still kind of is, but there's ways around that as well. So just overall, the farther you get into things, the better they get for the most part. So anyway, so I like these type of matchups because again, it gives the opportunity for the veteran. A lot of people just see it as an opportunity for the prospect to make a name off the veteran, but I think there's a lot to gain for these veterans fighting the young guys. But again, on the other side, for the prospect, you want to build your resume. You want to have those big names as well. And taking on former champions and these vets, they're necessarily not in the rankings, so you're not taking a big leap in that aspect as far as skill set goes, and then maybe biting a little bit more than you can chew, and then that's when you start, seeing issues where guys get rushed, and that actually, to some fighters, to many, I would say, has a big detriment if they get rushed. If it's too quickly, you see fighters again, their confidence gets shot, and sometimes their career just takes a different path. Some are able to bounce back fairly quick. Some takes longer. Some bounce back right away. But certainly, it's a risky thing when you just throw somebody in the deep end. But with Wineland, you're getting O'Malley's getting the name. O'Malley is getting the skill set because Wineland, believe it or not, he's a very very good fighter. He might be on a win streak. I don't know, but coming off a win, yeah. Um, so again, you're getting the name, you're getting the skill set, but again, it's not to the extreme. So this is a perfect matchup. I love these type of bouts. In fact, Wineland was gonna fight uh, Chito Vera. I really like that bout as well. Similar situation. Chito Vera coming up, a young guy, very much. Even though he's got a bunch of fights logged in, very much one of the new generation guys. So yeah, I think this is a great bout for both guys. Um, I think O'Malley looked fantastic in his last bout against Teco Quinones. I think of the world of Teco Quinones. Teco Quinones is super underrated. Saw him come up in tough Latin America. A guy that has really good boxing. He's tough. Um, Great cardio, good movement. Boxing so crisp, man. Very good hands. And then he goes out there and Sean O'Malley just put him away so quick in the first round. And in striking as well, where I thought he might have a little bit of an issue there. But yeah, just made him look not good. That's the truth. And I was surprised by that performance because prior to that, O'Malley had looked good and he'd obviously shown promise. DeAndre Sukumtaj fight was good. That was a good win, but that was a decision as well. Terrion Ware, who's not even, I don't think he's even in the UFC anymore. A decision win. And then he had that, obviously, that Dana White contender series run. So again, some things were impressive. You knew there was something in the mix, something in the works there. But I think the biggest, and also from the Terrion Ware to the Sukumtaj fight, I think there was a big improvement. But nothing compares to the improvement he had from the Sukumtaj fight to the Quinones fight. Remember, he had issues with USADA. His last fight was in 2018, March 2018. Then he comes back in March 2020. And I think that time off, the whole time he was just sharpening his skills, and he just looked like such a improved version just by like a million times. Like he just looked really good. I was impressed. That was the UFC 248 card. I was there as well in Vegas for MMA Junkie. So yeah, I'm siding with Sean O'Malley here. I think I think O'Malley, given I mean, maybe I'm putting too much stock on that Teco Quinones fight, but again, Teco Quinones is a tough dude, and he was ready for that fight. He came in hot. Um, I think O'Malley should win this, but again, a guy like Wineland who has a bit of an awkward style, who's experienced so many different styles as well, who's seen it all, who's got power to this day, who still has a pretty good chin on him. I mean, the last time he was knocked out was against Johnny Eduardo. Interesting. Yeah, and then after that, he only lost decisions to very tough guys, and then even before that, the another finish that he suffered as a defeat was against Renan Barao, but that was the Renan Barao that was on fire. So again, you got a guy that has a good chin, has good power, very good technique, bit of an awkward style which can put people off, weird timing, and a guy that has over almost 40 fights logged in. So certainly 38. So certainly a guy that has a lot of experience here. So you can't count him out. But I think, given O'Malley's performance, I think you got to go with him. And that'll be opening the main card of UFC 250. So it'll be a fun fight. And then below that, I'm gonna go a little bit into the prelims. Then we'll go back to the wait, I think it's frozen. Did the stream freeze? No, I think we're good, right? Yeah. So, anyways, I'm just gonna quickly go through a little bit of some of the prelims that I find interesting, and then I'll go back to answer any questions that you have. So it'll be a free for all there. So, anyways, right below that, you got again the same scenario that I just spoke about with Alex Caceres taking on Chase Hooper. Good fight. Chase Hooper is again a prospect. I believe he's 20 years old, right? He's very much a bright prospect here in the UFC. And Alex Caceres, 31, a guy that's been around, has seen it all. Maybe not to the point of Wineland, and obviously not a former champion, but certainly a guy that's skilled. Who, at some point, I believe he might have reached the top 5 of the bantamweight division. That was prior to him fighting Uriah Faber when Faber was in his prime. Yeah, so he had beaten Damasio Page, Motonubo Tezuka, then no contest against Kyung Ho Khan, who that fight actually was a win for him, but he tested positive for marijuana, so I still consider that a win. So yeah, win there, and then defeated Roland Delorme. That's a bit of a throwback. Then Sergio Perez, that was a big win for him, and that's when they fed him Uriah Faber, and he lost. But I believe he might have reached certainly the top 10, if not the top 5 at that specific moment. And he's always been trying to get back there. I spoke to him in the virtual media day, and Caceres was like, "Yeah, man, like he had a very honest self-assessment. He's like, yeah, I'm a gatekeeper. Like that's my label, and I accept it. And I'm not gonna pretend that I'm a top contender and be delusional. But that doesn't mean I'm satisfied with it. And I think I'm still improving, and I think I'm still I still have title aspirations, and I want to break from that label. So he's also switched camps. He's no longer at the MMA lab, although he's very cool with those guys. He moved back to Miami because that's where he's originally from, and I believe he's training with the Freedom Fighters. So a little bit going back into his old roots. That's where he started. So I wonder how that's going to impact his performance. That's going to be a good fight. Looking forward to it. And then you got some other good fights as well. This is on the ESPN Plus preliminary card. Ian Heinisch versus Gerald Meerschaert is a good fight. Cody Sandhagen, who's going into this fight with a lot going on. His little brother, 18-year-old, passed away. Sucks, man. He's fighting Brian Kelleher, who's the most badass MMA beat panelist. A very good fighter. Obviously, quite hot right now. He's coming off a big win recently. You also got Jussier Formiga, Alex Perez. Someone recently asked me who's got the best boxing at across weight classes, and then I went weight class by weight class. And now looking back, I forgot who I said at flyweight, but I don't think I said Alex Perez, and I actually think Alex Perez has the best boxing at flyweight. His hands are sharp, man. His hands are real good, and Formiga, obviously, amazing ground game plus good Muay Thai as well. So that's gonna be a fun fight. Evan Dunham taking on Gilbert Burns' little brother. So that's gonna be a fun fight. So yeah, this card might not be the best card, but it certainly does not suck. It's a good fight. A lot of lightweight action, not lightweight as in 155, but lightweight as in just smaller weight classes. So that's gonna be fun. All right, so that's basically my overall thoughts of UFC 250. Now I'm gonna answer questions. So if you got questions, throw them on the chat now, and I will get to them. That is the YouTube live chat, and anything goes. Anything goes. I might try to stick to UFC 250 stuff. I might answer some other questions, but save those for Tuesday. But yeah, try to stick to UFC 250 stuff. So yeah, now it's your time. If you want to ask questions, now is your time. I'm gonna go down the live chat right now. Dude, I forgot to bring water in the whole time. I've been struggling with cottonmouth. I was recently working out at the park, doing some boxing with my coach, Coach Fabio, and yeah, and then I started talking. After the training session, we just kind of started talking shit, and then I realized it was like, oh fuck, it's 3:15, and then I have to run home, shower, set this up, and yeah, I missed the water, so I'm a little parched. Just really soldiering on here. All right, so again, now's your time to throw questions. All right, this is an interesting one. Marco Aceves asks, will the smaller cage play a part in committing less mistakes? So yes. So well, I don't really understand your question here. Will the smaller cage play a part in committing less mistakes? Maybe. I think not necessarily. I think even in the bigger cage, I don't think fighters go, okay, well, I got space now. I can kind of chill and kind of be sloppy with my technique. I don't think that's the case at all. But I do think the smaller cage makes mistakes more costly. There's You can kind of get away with certain things in the bigger cage. If a guy shoots a takedown, um, the cage is going to be much farther away from you, obviously, in the bigger cage. So you might be able to, depending on the type of wrestling and the type of takedown, you might be able to, defend the takedown and sort of break away quite quickly and be back in, on the feet and just exchanging, right? Now, with the smaller cage, if somebody shoots for the takedown, and you see this a lot, like good wrestling doesn't need the cage. That's not that's not 100% true, but certainly, okay, let me flip it. I would say bad wrestling is more successful with the cage than without it. Because if you got somebody with a hard sprawl, you're just gonna eat the canvas. That's it. Period. But with the cage, you literally can't sprawl. You can't get your legs through the cage. So, there's that initial shot, that drive to the cage. And then once you're on the cage, even if your technique's not right, you're still pressing. You're still the guy, controlling the action. And that seems to, not only minimize the striking because, you can't strike during that, but also, it plays a factor in the hands, in the eyes of the judges, right? All right, this guy's controlling him. This guy's whatever. So certainly it makes mistakes more costly. I would say the smaller cage, and I think it hurts fighters that use range, that like to fight with the distance. Um, I think it does. It really does. To what extent, I don't know. Would it be enough to be the defining factor of a fight? Maybe. I think the fight is really close. I think the smaller cage could have a little bit of a say in the outcome, obviously, if it goes to decision. But if you're significantly the better fighter, I you know I don't think it should matter that much. I don't think it'll be a thing where this guy is a huge underdog in the bigger cage, and in the smaller cage he's all of a sudden a big favorite. I don't think it plays that big of a role, but certainly, again, this game's sometimes about inches, so literally inches. So the cage being smaller certainly could play a factor here. All right, MMA Elo. Okay, this is a bit random. How would you think Felicia would do against Kayla? I'm assuming Kayla Harrison. Um, Kayla's very good. I've actually been present for a lot of her fights at PFL, and she's a great fighter. But the competition that she's fought, one, are smaller girls because she's fighting at 155, and two, because again most of the higher level competition is over in the UFC and Bellator. We've yet to see her test her skills against someone who's super legit. We're talking about Felicia Spencer. Don't forget, she's a former Invicta champion, a girl that went to a decision with Chris Cyborg and did quite well, to be honest. And now back in title contention here, fighting for the belt against Amanda Nunes. So I would favor Spencer. Spencer has also been doing it for longer. Harrison is still very much a new fighter that's in development. So maybe both prime. I think that'll be a different question because who knows how high the ceiling is for Kayla Harrison. I expect it to be very high, but right now I think I would favor Felicia Spencer. It's be honest though. We tuning in for Cory versus Aljo. Who you got, Danny? So I'm assuming kind of hating there on the co-main event. I'm actually tuning in for the co-main event too. I'm curious, man. I mean, Garbrandt was, I'm telling you, dude, when he fought Cruz, it felt magical. Like, those were the type of performances like Anderson Silva-esque against Forrest Griffin, dodging all the punches and then coming back. I think it was with like a straight right. There was an aura about him that this guy was going to be a superstar. I mean, the skill set was there. The from fight to fight improvement was there. Even outside of it, markability, the looks, etc. Good with the media. it just seemed like this was going to be the future of the bantamweight division, and then things took a sharp turn with TJ Dillashaw. So again, I still believe there's good reasons to believe that he's still very much the future. I don't think it's right to kind of give up on him yet. Given the circumstances that he's had, one fighting Dillashaw, who's one of the best bantamweights that ever existed, may or may not might have been an EPO as well. Keep that in mind. And also a bunch of back issues that he had, and especially for his style, which is boxing. He uses mainly his hands. He kicks a little bit, but it's really his hands. Bro, I'm telling you, like, for those that haven't boxed, like right now, like I'm even having a hard time just kind of keeping an upright position just because I was boxing and at the park with my coach. And the whole time, dude, you're doing this. The whole time, your back is just constantly moving. Your lower back, your back after like a good boxing session, your back is so sore, man. It's crazy. After sparring, dude, you feel like you've been into like a car crash and your back is just sore as shit. So if you have a bad back and that's your style, bad back in general, just for combat sports sucks. Like you can get away with bad knees. Kamaru Usman has bad knees. Like he can't even run, so he swims a lot for his cardio. Certainly not good, but you can. There's ways around that. Even like a few other injuries, right? But if your back is bad, man, like you're very limited. And then on top of that, if your style is boxing, like ooh, that's rough. So again. He seems to have figured all these issues out. He changed camp as well, I believe, trying out new things. So we'll see. I'm not ready to give up on Garbrandt yet. So again, a little bit of a rant here, but I'm excited for that fight. But yeah, I think Aljo versus Cory Sandhagen from a competitive standpoint, I think that's super interesting. And I'm curious to see how it's going to look. Who's going to chase who? Because both guys kind of like. Probably Sandhagen's gonna do most of the chasing, but like both guys kind of like sitting on the back foot and being counter fighters. So yeah, I don't know, but I would say I think I got Sandhagen, to be quite honest, but I don't know. Again, it's a coin flip. It might as well be 50-50. You ask me in an hour, I might be siding with Aljo. So very on the fence about that one. And not because I don't want to make a pick, but because both guys are just so good. All right. JS. Nunes gassed in the last fight trying to finish. Will Spencer try and use her size and weight on Nunes early? Yeah, like I said, breaking down this fight, just on my own without the questions. Yeah, it's size is going to be a big factor here. I mean, I don't know if Spencer can make 135, but we know that Nunes can. And even Nunes is still a powerhouse, even at featherweight. She's still a strong lady. But like I said, when it comes down to cardio, grappling definitely takes a big toll on the gas tank. So even if Spencer is unable to get takedowns, to have success in the clinch as far as landing good strikes or even establishing good control, just if she's constantly trying at the very least, just locking up for a few seconds with Nunes, and Nunes has to work to break that out, being pinned against the cage, and she has to work to create separation, walk away and get back on the striking. If she just happens to get taken down and she works her way back up, I mean, all of that is expenditure of energy. So even if Spencer's not successful early on, deep into the fight, all that work will pay off. And I feel like that's where it's going to get really interesting. But at the same time, you look at Nunes' power, bro, try to take a punch from that lady. Try to take a kick from that lady. Now, there's good reasons to believe that Spencer could maybe do that because she went to a decision with Cyborg who puts everybody out, But again, like I said, I do believe Nunes' technique is a little bit cleaner than Cyborg's. And when you got power, her power might be just as much, if not maybe a little bit more. But let's just say for this specific question, let's say is equal. That little bit of extra clean technique will just amplify your power so much. So again, maybe Nunes puts her away early. I don't know, but certainly, if I were coaching Spencer, I'd be like, "Yo, tie up with her. Make her work. Make her work. Even if you're getting tuned up, F it. Make her work. So yeah, I think that's gonna be Spencer's strategy here. Just make it a high paced fight. Make it ugly. All right. Okay. Let me see. What is your prediction? All right. Ali asks, what is your prediction on Jan versus Aldo? Again, not UFC 250 related, but I think it's still, obviously, given the bantamweight theme of this card, it is kind of related a little bit. And also, there's a second part to this question as well. So, what is your prediction on Jan versus Aldo? I have Jan by TKO. Jan gets better as the fight goes long. Aldo fades. Even against Moraes, he was fading in round 3. Plus, Dana said Cory versus Aljo gets title shot. So Dana says a lot of things, and a lot of those things come true, but also a lot of those other things don't come true. So just because he says that Aljo versus Sandhagen gets the title shot, don't be too confident on that. Plus, like I said, there could be injuries that stem from that fight. You never know. So a lot of things are in play here. But my prediction for Aldo versus Jan, I think Aldo pulls it off. I think Jan is, again, I don't know. Jan is good, but there's still questions about him. But again, he's think about this. He's very much okay. I'll say this: we know more about Aldo than we do know more about Jan. So the unknown presents questions which make me try to side with what I do know and sort of the sure bet, right? I know what Aldo can bring, and what Aldo can bring at 135, surprisingly, it's very good. Very good. He's a very good 35er. I think he's probably better at 45, to be quite honest, but at 35, he's still a pretty damn good fighter. Whereas Peter Yan, certainly great boxing, and he has a lot of other great attributes as well, and certainly a worthy contender, and rightfully so, should be fighting for the belt. But there's still a little bit of questions. I think I might favor Aldo, but I don't know. But I'm gonna go with Aldo. But again, like you said, Aldo does fade a little bit. Jan gets stronger as the fight goes on, so that could be. I mean, think about it. That fight with Moraes was competitive. I don't think he was fading that much, but keep in mind it was only 3 rounds. You had another 10 minutes to that. I would favor Jan as the fight goes longer. So yeah. And yeah. So yeah, we'll see. And as far as the title shot, yeah, I hope you're right, man. And I hope Dana sticks to his guns here and does give the title shot to the winner of Aljo versus Cory Sandhagen, because they deserve it. All right. Somebody sharing love. Appreciate you, Biggie Bry, gaming exclusive. Thank you for the kind words. Scott Brown says Hooper's poor man's Bryce Mitchell. I don't agree with that statement. I think they have different styles. I think Hooper seems to be a much more more of a physical presence. And even though they're both grapplers, and they like to take the fights to the ground, they do have different styles. So I disagree with Hooper being a poor man's Bryce Mitchell. I don't think that's quite accurate. I will say this: I will say Bryce Mitchell is farther along his MMA career, so I consider him to be a better fighter. But again, there's a lot of unknowns about Hooper, and also he's just 20 years old. I think Bryce Mitchell might be like 25 or something like that. Like 5 years, it's a big difference. But yeah. That's a good one. Your dead Jack says, if O'Malley and Kelleher both win, will Sean, you spelled Sean wrong, and I believe is Sean, be officially ducking Brian if they don't fight next? Will Kelleher and Staman's ranking, even though their fight is at featherweight? Yeah, yeah, I think very much like the Chito Vera Sung Yadong fight. Like those fights that involve two bantamweights that have really prior to the pandemic had no interest of moving up a weight class, and it just happens to be a weight class above because of this. This is really a bantamweight fight. It's not. It's not. It's not a featherweight fight. It doesn't count for the featherweight rankings, and it should count for the bantamweight rankings. And I know again the guys didn't make the weight, but again we're in a pandemic, bro. Like fighters are taking fights on short notice. It's hard to put in the road work. It's hard to put in the work given that the gyms are closed in certain states. So you gotta be a little flexible on that end. So I do think this is a bantamweight bout, although it's going down at 145 pounds. And if O'Malley wins, I don't think he'd be ducking Kelleher. I think that'd be a good fight. It'd be fun. But he's a guy that gets called out all the time. He's got so many options. So if a better option, and I think actually Keller, given his performances, I think that'd be a good option for him. But if a better option presents, like fighting like an Eddie Wineland, a former champion, if you were in his shoes, who are you gonna take? So I really don't like the whole ducking accusations. A few others here. Apex of Wokeness is notorious for doing that. Look, you're in the UFC. Your goal is to fight for the belt. There are some guys that get picky and choosy about how they want to get there, but at the end of the day, if you're in the UFC, you can't duck anyone, and I think all those guys and girls are very much aware of that. And uh, I don't know. The ducking word doesn't sit right with me. I don't think these guys duck anyone. I mean, dude, he's fighting Eddie Wineland. That guy's tough as shit. Like he ain't ducking anyone. All right, a couple more questions and I'll dip out. Your dead Jack asks again: should Sean take a fight with a ranked opponent next if he wins, or too soon? I'd like to see him a slow build. Believe it or not, there's something to sort of like the Michael Page like build. Like, dude, just knock. I don't want to say cans, but just knock out lower tier fighters. Build an incredible highlight reel, and then we'll throw you up there. O'Malley's so young that like, and he's so good that I think that'd be a fun route that I'd love to see for him. Mm, Not necessarily fight like bad opposition, but just pretty good guys. I think like this level, like Eddie Wineland is pretty good. If he gets to fight like a Chito Vera, that's pretty good. Guys that are kind of hovering outside of the top 15. If you do that long enough, he's able to sharp his tools. Then you throw him against the top dogs. But yeah, a ranked opponent is fine, just as long as I don't think it's in the top five. But again, he's looked good, and if he manages to get an impressive win, he feels like he can hang with the top five, then so be it. But yeah, I generally like to sort of, especially with the very young fighters, like more err more on the side of caution. So yeah. All right, I'll take a couple more and about. Let's see. Kevin S donated to a super chat. Thank you very much, bro. He says, "Will Aljo be affected by not having his trainers?" I don't know what's the story on that. I gotta follow up, to be quite honest. I don't know if did his trainers make it out. I don't even know. I mean, I was there for the virtual media day. I don't think that got brought up. Um, that's interesting. Let me look him up. Maybe if I find something real quick, I can comment on it. Well, let me look up his Instagram. Instagram is always a good tool. Let's see here. Aljamain Sterling. See who's he with this whole training, this whole build up. Yeah, I mean the limit of coaches and stuff like that. Jesus Christ, I don't know if you guys can see that, hear that. Yeah, the limiting of coaches certainly kind of hurts him. It hurts everybody. They're kind of on the same playing field, and we know his corner is really important to him. So maybe yeah, but I mean the guy's still a pro fighter. The guy knows what's up. I don't think it'll affect him, you know, to the extent where he loses because of that. Yeah, the corners are limited, but I think Aldo should have his people. I'm pretty sure. Okay. Steve Sparks actually hopped in there, said Longo isn't traveling right now. Yeah, so Longo has actually been one of the guys that has been in the space of MMA, very outspoken about sort of COVID and stuff. I mean, he's a New York guy. I'm telling you, shit here in New York got really bad. It's gotten a lot better. I haven't looked at the stats of the deaths because, at some point it kind of just makes you depressed, and sometimes it's too much information. But I know from the last time I checked, we were down in like 100 and something. And at one point, we were doing 10 times that as far as deaths. Like 1,000 people were dying a day. Like 1,000 people gone every day. That's crazy. And he knows, like, he did an interview with MMA Junkie Radio, and it was so sad. Again, he wasn't personally affected by it, but he knew people that were. So like he had a friend that like his son died, not related to COVID-19, but they couldn't bury him. They couldn't have a funeral because of COVID-19. This is when it was at the peak, and New York was the epicenter of the world as far as the virus is concerned. I believe it switched over to Brazil now. So yeah, man, shit was bad. And he is an older guy. I don't know how old he is, but he's probably in his 50s or 60s, maybe. I don't know. If he's younger, I'm sorry, Coach Longo. So he's definitely more at risk than others, and I would obviously understand if that's the reason why he doesn't want to travel because of COVID, and also like in a New York airport right now, like fuck that, dude, that's rough. Yeah, so we'll see, but that's a good observation. I didn't pick up on that. Interesting. All right, so I believe that's it for the questions. Again, any more questions? Now it's time. If not, I'm gonna bounce out. All right, so yeah, that's it. So, anyways, plus I've gone over an hour and 20 minutes, so quite long here. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Please remember, give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. I plan on doing a lot more cool shit, as I said before, and improve this whole experience. I appreciate everybody that donated to the super chat. That's obviously very helpful. And yeah, tell your friends about it. Trying to make this, trying to grow this thing. And certainly, I do things to do that, but you guys play a big role in that, and you guys have been playing a big role in that. So I'm very appreciative of everybody's support, of me and what I'm doing here on this YouTube channel. So, anyways, thank you for tuning in. Subscribe. Like button, share it. Enjoy the fights this weekend. They're going to be quite fun. Again, it's not the most star-studded card, but the fights in itself are pretty good, and they are very important, especially for the bantamweight division, and also the main event, as they said, has historical implications given the fact that we're witnessing an actual champ defend both belts. We've never seen that before. And as they say, you're not a champion until you defend your belt. And, I don't agree with that 100%, but I think there's something to it, especially, getting to champ is easy, but being a champ, that's tough. And Amanda Nunes is doing just that. So that should be acknowledged. So anyways, very, very important fight, and very historical fight here with Nunes and Spencer. So anyways, looking forward to a fight. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Be safe, stay safe, not only from COVID, but the world is a crazy place right now. Black Lives Matter. And, it's very sad to see what's happening with this country with police brutality and certain just people in color, just not African Americans, but, even my Hispanic community. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. But to be quite honest, I was a little bit oblivious, and I didn't know it was this bad. Like, I knew it was bad and things weren't good, but like watching everything that's been happening in the news has just been depressing. I mean, literally protests have gone down by my street. All the time you hear choppers and things around around Brooklyn. The guy at my bodega, has somebody, standing outside with a bat. Like things are crazy, man. Things are crazy. So there's curfew at 8 p.m. So yeah, the world is a crazy place right now. So please stay safe, spread love, and love one another, because that's all we got, man. So I appreciate you guys. Much love. Enjoy the fights.